All right, great. I think we'll go ahead and get started now. For those of you joining, we'll kick it off, but we are recording the webinar, so if you miss any of the session today, we will send you the recording. So thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Modernize Your Finance Department to Maximize Performance in 2021. Big thanks to Zumasys for their collaboration on this event and for their continued partnership. If 2020 has taught us anything, it's that we need to be flexible. This past year, strategies were derailed, budget shifted, and likely you found yourself having to pivot many of your financial plans. Well, this year, we're hoping for some more certainty and a little less disruption. One thing is clear, we need our finance teams to be able to react more quickly and provide teams with the financial data they need to make stronger data-driven decisions. During today's webinar, we're going to talk about how you can modernize your finance department to achieve just that. Hi, I'm your host for today, Jamie Brooks with Phocas Software. I'm the Partner Alliance Manager and have had the opportunity to work with Zumasys throughout our partnership. We have a great group on the call today, including Becky Cravenswaite, Software Development Manager at Zumasys, who many of you probably know already, as well as John Sefton, Solution Consultant with Phocas Software. So for today's agenda, we'll be talking you through the challenges with traditional financial reporting, and we'll show you a demo on how you can modernize this approach with Phocas Financial Statement. Then we'll expand further and show you a more streamlined and collaborative approach to budgeting and forecasting. If you have any questions throughout, we've got a chat feature, so feel free to chat your questions and we will address them at the end. So now I'm going to pass things off to John Sefton. John's been with Phocas for several years now, one of our solution experts, and is going to take a deep dive into financial reporting and budgeting and forecasts for you. So take it away, John.
Thanks, Jamie. Hi, everyone. Here on this slide, we have an overview of how a lot of our customers are currently doing their financial reporting. And it revolves around the finance department generating reports and then disseminating them to all the different individuals. And with that, there's a lot of manual work that goes to create that report and then send it out, and everybody then has their own versions of a static report that won't update on a schedule. If we make adjustments, we need to recreate these reports. So there's quite a bit of manual work involved. And so what Phocas is going to try to help us do is automate a lot of that work. In this scenario, if there are questions from the management, they all have to go back to finance. So there's quite a bit of back and forth. It can be chaotic. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir to a lot of you that know this situation where once I have this static report, if there's questions or adjustments, I have to go back to finance, and it's kind of a back and forth that's really time consuming and draining. So what Phocas is going to try to do is we're going to try to centralize that data where accounting still has control over the ERP and the transactions that are happening in it, but everybody's going to be able to log into Phocas and see this report, and every time finance decides to update it, they're going to get updated information. And using a data analytics tool versus a static report, they're going to be able to answer a lot of their questions by being able to dig in and looking at what's causing the numbers to appear the way they do. So much greater visibility for the business and a big relief for the finance department. Now, what are the benefits that we're going to be able to offer you? First, right, time savings. That manual approach to it there's hours and hours and hours just preparing the statements, hours that could be used to analyze the actual data. So by automating this and making it much quicker, the demand on finance and IT is lessened and relieves them of a lot of pressure and allows people to work on things that are more valuable. Also, with Phocas, since we're all looking at the same data, we have a single source of truth. So gone are those days where it's my version of the report versus your version of the report. We're all looking at the same data. Everybody's marching to the same beat. And then, obviously at the end, there reduced burden of moving between accounting systems and spreadsheets. Again, more work, manual work with data. So let's jump into the finance tool, and I'm going to give you an overview and also talk about how we've made things that used to be traditionally IT roles. Now accountants can do this type of work. All right, so here's my, this is my sandbox. This is my personal sandbox, and in it I have financial statements. And financial statements is built upon the same technology as our core analytics. So we've really just bolted on our finance tool to our base Phocas analytics. So what that means is that we can still do the same things we do with Phocas. We can build dashboards, we can build alerts, favorites. It's all the same. Now, this dashboard took me about 30 minutes to put together. If you haven't used Phocas before, you'll realize that everything we do with Phocas is designed around ease of use. We want business people to be able to feel comfortable about working with data. So we didn't design this for data scientists. We designed it for CFOs, operations managers, sales managers, people in the business. And what we found is that if we give an intuitive, easy to use tool, people are more likely to use it. So that's what Phocas is all about, user adoption. We want our customers to get as much value as possible from our product. Now, at any time, this dashboard here, these are really all just reports, where I have a visual menu of reports, where instead of maybe a long list of reports I have to select and then run and then wait to finish and export to Excel, the visual report, anything that sticks out to me, I can drill into the underlying database, which is where our financial statements is at. So I'm going to go ahead and hit my Analyze button, and that's going to launch me into my database. And this is where really all the magic happens. The earliest versions of Phocas look like this with these dimensions down the left-hand side, where if I want to look at, let's say, 12 months of data, and right now I'm comparing to my budget, and I can see that by category, or I can see it by account. Each button click is essentially going to be a report for me when I click this button. And notice the results coming back so quickly. That's a big part of what Phocas is that the intuitive interface and then the lightning fast results really lowers people's apprehension to working with data. So it's kind of like giving someone a cheat sheet where people before that may have not had an appetite to work with data can really find this engaging. So for financial statements, my summary button right here, when I click on my summary button, this is when I get into my financial statements module. And this is all, this whole screen here, these groups, sales other, all the way down to operating expenses, it's all created using our statements tool, which I'm going to take you through in a moment. And the statements tool was designed for accountants, CFOs, controllers, people that are not technical. We've made something that used to be very technical and now made it pretty seamless, and you'll see that in a moment. So during implementation, we're going to have a task to use our statements tool to create these different categories, and you'll see them here if I click on my category dimension. And then once I create these categories, I'm going to, using my statement tool, map accounts to these different categories. So for example, if I were to select operating expenses and then Phocas and then go to account, I want these all to be my operating expense accounts, where if I clear this category, it goes back to all my accounts. Now, once I do that, I'm going to have a mode here for my different financial statements. So profit and loss, balance sheet, cash flow, and trial balance are the 4 statement types that we offer. But using our statements tool, I can create additional versions of my different financial statements. So maybe I'll have a profit and loss statement for my branch managers, and a completely different profit and loss statement for my board of directors. I can have as many versions of these documents as you want. Here you can see my balance sheet. I have a fairly basic balance sheet here, but then I've created another one that has ratios. So depending on what I'm trying to accomplish, I have flexibility in these statements. Every time I update my data, these numbers are going to update as well. So there's a sync tool that connects to your ERP, and when I sync that data, it's going to update these numbers, and that's going to happen on a schedule. So these numbers are just going to refresh, usually nightly. During month end, we might update much more frequently than that, but it's all going to be automated. We're removing that manual work of that spreadsheet back and forth type of situation. So I'm going to show you more about our financial statements, but before, let's jump into the statements tool so we can see how this all gets pieced together. So when I come in here, you'll notice that these values are the values that I saw from my mode dropdown, my profit and loss, and then my custom branch P&L, my balance sheet with ratios. So I can create new statements from here, or I can edit an existing one. So right away, you'll recognize the screen. This is the P&L we were just looking at. We have our sales, sales other, all the way down to operating expenses. And the way I did this is I use this green plus sign and I create groups. And on the group, I can name it whatever I want. It's a free form text field, so I can type whatever I want. I can place the group where I want on my form. And then once I've set up my groups, I'm going to create some calculations like you see here for net sales, which is adding up the variables for my different groups here. Sales, sales other, intercompany sales have variables A, O, K, and I'm adding those up. So once I have my P&L set up the way I want at the top level, I'm then going to come to my accounts tab here where I'm going to find my chart of accounts. And on this screen, this is where I'm going to map my accounts to the different groups that I just showed you. So I can select one or several accounts, and then from the drop down, assign them the category I want it to have: sales, sales other, operating expense. And I'm going to go through and do that for all of my accounts until I have everything categorized. But I'm not finished. There's a really neat feature here that I can click on the plus sign right here and create additional columns. So if I click plus sign here, I can name it whatever I want, and it's going to create a column like you see here for subgroup and territory. They have trash can, I can delete them. And the reason why I did this is because at the top level, I have my groupings, but let's say under operating expenses, I have 237 operating expense accounts. And in that is all different types of activities. Marketing, for example, they're all listed under operating expenses. So what I've done is I've used this subgroup to further categorize these accounts as marketing. So that way, when I look at my operating expenses, I can see them grouped nicely by subgroup. I've also done the same thing for territory, where I've given each one of my GL accounts a specific territory. And now in your system, your GL account might be made up of segments. The first four is the account. The next two maybe is like some type of subgroup or department. We can break out those account segments as different columns here that we can then use in our financial statement. Again, this screen used to be done on the back-end database. It required IT to do the work. It wasn't something that could be done quickly. Now we have a tool that accountants and CFOs can do this type of work on their own. Once I've categorized all my accounts, I'm going to click Hide Mapped Accounts. I don't show anything. So everything's been mapped. Any new accounts come in, then they're going to show up here as unmapped, and I can take care of it and be on my way. All right, so hopefully everybody is clear on our statements tool and our account mapping tool. And once I've done all this, the result is going to be my financial statement that you see here. So now let's go through some different scenarios of how I can actually use this tool. First of all, I have two different columns showing here, current versus budget, and the difference between current and budget. And I can turn on these columns by using this drop-down menu. If I turn on previous, so this is the current 12 months versus the previous 12 months. And then I have my current versus previous difference and my current versus budget difference. So I can turn these columns on or off as I see fit. Maybe I want to turn them all off and just have a really basic P&L here. Or since it's 12 months, maybe I want to see the periods. I want to see a breakout of each month. So now for the last 12 months, I can see the P&L for each month really nicely. Or I have some other options here for percent contribution and percent of revenue. What this is showing is that, hey, my COGS is 72.87% of my revenue. And then if I were to expand, let's say, operating expenses, I can see that interest expense alone is 12.55% of my operating expenses. So percent contribution to the group and percent of revenue for my sales accounts. And so I'm going to go ahead and reset. Focus is like an Etch-a-Sketch, right? Anytime I want to start over, I just hit that reset button. And then I'm going to come in here and I'll put previous back on. Now, by default, I'm looking at multiple locations. So if I click on country, I'm actually looking at 3 countries, or these could be branches or territories, or they could even be different companies. I could have company on system A and another company on system B, and then bring that together here in this same environment. So I could view those companies together. So for right now, we're just gonna call these branches, right? So for my US branch, by default, I'm looking at all of them, but now I'm gonna hit focus, look at the US branch, and then come up to my summary button, and now I have a P&L for my US branch. I can set up at a user level that they only see a certain branch. So if they were to come into this database or the dashboard, it's automatically going to filter this P&L for their branch. So again, we have one environment that everybody's using. They're getting their view of it if you just want them to see their branch. All right. Now, if I deselect on country here, if I deselect this X, I go back to all locations, and this is a total company P&L. Now, recall that I created my subgroups. And if I look at operating expenses, that's where I had the, 237 operating expense accounts. Kind of hard to navigate through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that subgroup dimension that I created on the statement tool and drag it up and drop it right here. And now when I expand to operating expenses, I can see all my operating expenses grouped nicely, all the way to marketing. Now notice the budget. This budget stream right here that we see is created with our budgeting and forecasting tool, which I'm going to show in the second part of this webinar. And I can have multiple budgets in here. And the budgets are done at the GL account level. So website hosting here, you can see these are all, right here, these are all the different budgets. Now, if I collapse marketing, it rolls that budget up. So it's at the account level, but when I'm looking at the group, I'm seeing the budget for that group all the way up to operating expenses. It rolls that budget up really nicely. So it knows exactly where I'm at within the system. Now, notice I have a couple different levels here. So let's go back to country, which we're calling branch, and operating expenses, marketing, and now I see my different locations. So I can see it broken out like that, and still the budget's responding appropriately. And I can switch the order if I wanted. I can just drag it over. Then I'll expand. And now underneath the location, I have my different subgroups. So lots of flexibility. A couple more things I want to show you, and then we'll move on to budgeting and forecasting. But one of my favorite parts of Focus is what I'm going to show you next. And maybe I'm a little selfish because I implement Focus. And having this feature allows me to get a lot of confidence from the customers. Any number that I see, I can right click on it and go to transactions. And what this is going to do, it's going to show me all the journal postings that make up that total. So there's no mysteries in Focus. When I see a number, I can get down to the transaction level and then be able to tie that back to the ERP to the penny. So that there's no guesswork in the numbers that we're looking at. So you can imagine during implementation how nice that is for us to be able to tie out our numbers so easily. So for this date, for this subgroup, for this country, for this category, here's all the journal postings. There's 139 of them. So I love that feature. And then I guess the next thing I'd like to show is, let me clear these filters here, is that we absolutely can export this to Excel. We can print PDFs. If I do export it to Excel, it's nice because it's going to maintain all the formatting that you see here within the application. And then I can collapse these groups here. And then if I click on a cell, you'll see it even has the formulas in here. So if I needed to extend this for some other project, I could do that. But you might not need to go into Excel that much because you're going to be in Focus. All right. That's what I wanted to show for finance today. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint and we're going to continue on to our budgeting and forecasting portion. All right. So on this screen, it's an overview of the budgeting process, right? And just like with our financial statements, probably even more intensive, where we're downloading Excel sheets, we're sending them out to the different budget owners. We're having to create different versions of the budgeting for each person with the data that we want them to see and not with anything else. We send those budgets out, they come back. We have to then consolidate all those budgets. Lots of version control, lots of security concerns because we don't want certain people to see certain information. So with all these different versions of spreadsheets, it can get lost and we can get out of sync. So, and these budgets are static. And once you create this report, there's no logging, there's no auditing. So it leaves a lot to be desired and can be quite tedious. With Focus, it's all centralized. It's going to be an environment that everybody's accessing. They're seeing their version of the numbers. So version control is going to be simplified because it's all going to be browser-based, and they're only going to see what you want them to see. And everybody's actually going to be working off the same set of data. So when we enter those budget numbers, they're being recorded, and I don't have to do version control. The security is going to be handled for me. The data is going to be, for our P&Ls, is going to be updated on a schedule. And it's very collaborative. We're going to be able to have a workflow where we leave notes and give us a lot of improvement. So with that, I'm going to start the next part of our demo with budgeting and forecasting. All right. All right. So today, I'm the budget owner. It's my favorite time of the year. It's budget season. So I'm ready to kick off the budget process. So I accessed my budgeting and forecasting. I'm going to click new workbook, and I'm kicking off the budgeting process. So I'm going to give it a name. We'll call it Zumasys Webinar 2021. It's based on my financial statements database, and I have to choose one of my P&Ls that I want to use as my template for the budget. So I'm going to use just my base profit and loss statement. I'm logged in as Focus. I'm the budget owner. I'm also the budget administrator, but I could assign someone else to be an administrator to assist me if that's something I wanted to do. And if you recall, we had our subgroup where we're grouping all our marketing accounts together. So I'm going to use that in this budget so I can make it easier for me to navigate through the different accounts. All right. Now that I've done this, I'm going to click next. And now I have to choose what type of period type I want to budget against. It could be fiscal periods. It could be quarters. It could be a number of different things. In this example, I'm just going to use months. I'm going to do select my range for my budget. I might want to do the whole year, or maybe a pandemic hits and I want to do a new one in the middle of a year. I could do that. For this, I'm going to go ahead and hit 2021 to December. Now, the next part is where I'm going to start to see the benefit of having my budgeting and forecasting tool based on my BI and data analytics tool, is that I can populate the budget with last year's values, or I can populate it with zeros if I wanted to start from scratch, but we'll go ahead and take last year's values as a starting point. And then finally, I am going to select the budget that I want to do it against. So I'm going to do this, and I'm going to base it on US dollars and not my British pounds. All right, now once the budget loads, you'll notice that it looks very much like my P&L. And as the budget owner, I'm going to have other people assist me in entering these budget values. And in this scenario, I have my IT manager do the budget for my computer equipment and phones. So for today, my landlines and mobile phones, I'm going to assign these accounts to him to complete the budget for it. So I click on my workflow button here, and I can assign this to my IT manager. Notice this row goes from yellow to white. I can only edit cells that are yellow. So this is the version control that you're seeing, is that now the only person that can edit this number is the IT manager. The next one, mobile phones, I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to put a little comment in on this one and say, don't forget the new hires in July. And then I'm going to assign that over to the IT manager. All right, so in a moment, I'm going to log in as the IT manager so you can see what he sees. But before I do that, I'm going to introduce a concept called a driver. And we have a number of different types. And these drivers are essentially pieces of data that we can use within our financial statements budget. So today I'm going to do manual entry, but I have database, right? Database, I could bring in numbers from my sales database, which is based off invoices. I could bring in numbers from my inventory database or other sources of data that are going to help drive my budget. And we've just introduced a dedicated headcount driver as well. This is brand new. But today I'm going to do manual entry. And I'm going to just call it manual. And I'm going to, so it's going to create a new tab, and I can reference the values on this tab from my main budget. And today I'm going to call it headcount. And I'm going to enter in my numbers here. So I have 10, and then I'm going to right click and copy it forward. So I have 10, but don't forget the new hires in July. So I'm going to change that to 12 and copy that forward. So now I have this that I can reference anywhere in my budget. Maybe my sales goals are tied to the number of reps I have, right? So I'm going to have this here and be able to use that headcount all through my budget. And if it were to change, I could change it here and I'll update all throughout the budget. And you can see I can have multiple of them. So it might be vehicles or computers or whatever it might be that you want to use as a driver. All right. So now I'm going to go to my new browser and I'm going to log in as the IT manager. Now, if I scroll down, you'll see that I have one Zumasys webinar. I have 2 tasks. You can see I've done a few of these before. So if I go into Zumasys webinar, it loads that budget. And notice, I can only see what's been assigned to me. Right, so that's security. We talked about version control. Now security, I can only see the numbers that the budget owner allowed me to see. So if I expand it, I can see the ones that are assigned to me, they're yellow. In fact, I can click up here to 2 tasks and click on it, it would take me straight to it. Now, my landlines is pretty straightforward. If I will come into this number and right click and hit spread, I can take last year's actuals and increase it by 5%. Or maybe I negotiated a flat fee of $35,000 and I want to spread that evenly over the month. Or actually, based on last year, and you see I put my comparison on where I can see last year's numbers. These numbers do fluctuate some. So instead of spreading it evenly, I want to base it on actuals. Okay. So now I feel good about this. So I'm going to go ahead and assign it back to the budget owner with the comment, all set, boss. And send that back. The row goes from yellow to white. I can no longer edit it. The next one, mobile phones, is a little bit more involved. There's more contributors to this budget. So just like when we were in grade school and the math teacher asked you to show your work to see how you got to your answer, that's what we're going to do here by using my sum line. And what this is each line is going to sum up to the telephone group. So I have my cell phone and then my cell plans. So for cell phones, I bought a bulk quantity of them at the beginning of the year for $10,000. So I'm just going to take that $10,000 and spread it across the months. But the cell plan is a little bit more involved. For this, it's dependent on headcount. So I'm going to use that manual driver that I created earlier. I can come up here and in my function bar, hit equal sign. It's $100 times my headcount. If I hit enter, it'll take me back there and you can see I have a formula for this cell. Now, if I right click and copy it forward, you're going to see, sure enough, in July, when my head count changes, it's going to update that number as well. So I can now assign this back to the budget owner. All set, boss. And submit that. Now, if I come back, so I'm going to minimize this browser as the IT manager. I'm done with the IT manager. Now, if I come back, you're going to see I have 2 tasks up here. You can see just a few seconds ago, the IT manager submitted this back to me. So if I click on it, it's going to take me right to it. Okay, so now my option here is I can click on it and I have the option to accept it or reject it. So I could put a comment and reject it. You could have a dialogue back and forth happening in the system. For this example, though, I'm going to go ahead and accept it. And then there's a checkbox here to mark it as complete. And I'm going to do that for my other one as well and mark that as complete. And if I wanted to, I can right click and go to workflow history and see the exchange of hands. So if there was any comments or dialogue that happened, we would see the back and forth happen here. So here we're introducing the ability to have an audit log of your budget process. So in addition to the version control, the security, now we have auditing as well. Now, our goal is going to be eventually to get all of our accounts updated and marked as complete. And once that's done, I'll be ready to go ahead and publish this back to my financial statement, where, if you recall, I had multiple budgets in there. Okay, so my variance stream here, if I were to publish that, I would now have a new budget stream available, and you can have as many as you want. There's no limit. All right, well, that is my overview for budgeting and forecasting. I hope you can see the value in it. If you have any questions, I'd love to answer them.
Awesome. Thanks, John. That was great. So I'll just take a minute now. You hear an echo? Or is it just me? John, do you hear any echo?
I don't hear it, but I can.
It's okay. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't everybody. Okay, great. Thank you. So I just want to take a minute and kind of summarize what you've seen today. I love this slide because it just shows an overview of our company-wide planning solutions that we offer all in one single platform. So we've really taken our core analytics solution and expanded that same platform and philosophy across Phocas financial statements and now our new budgeting and forecasting solution. So across all those products, as John mentioned, the ease of use remains the same. Our software is incredibly easy to use and allows for decisions from all the way at the C-suite down to the line level, providing organizations with the ability to make data-driven decisions at every level of the business. So we're really proud to be partnering with Zumasys to offer their clients this opportunity. So I'm going to pass it now to Becky. Becky's going to come on and discuss some of Zumasys' consulting services. So Becky, you're up.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, with Zumasys Consulting Services, we make it really easy for you to get your data into Phocas, and then the Phocas folks take it over from there. But we have a special tool we created to extract your data from your multi-value system. We can use data from D3, Universe, Unidata, OpenQM, and of course JBase. And we can also get data out of your system if you run something other than that multi-value. But for this tool, those are the ones that it applies to. So we would consult with you, find out what data you want to export to Phocas and prepare that with our tool and extract that data and then set that up to go on an ongoing basis at whatever cadence makes sense to you. So nightly or a couple of times a day, or if you want to do it at another cadence, that works as well. So we work directly with you and the Phocas team to create that data extract and then get it into Phocas to let them present it to you. So that's the service we offer.